move on to the next panel discussion, which is from headlines to ground truth, how the written word shaped climate accountability. We are all influenced by the media, the stories we read, and the narratives that shape the understanding. But we are here to understand how the media and the different stakeholders within the ecosystem, how do they hold power to account, and how can they be monumental in translating action on the ground. Let me introduce you to the panelists, and I have the opportunity of introducing Rajan Mehta ji again. He is a climate entrepreneur and thought leader and the founder of Climate Ventures Partner, where he works to accelerate the adoption of clean technology solutions in India. He's also building Climate Action Labs, a platform focused on advancing collaborative climate action, and author of Backstage Climate. Rajan brings deep insights into climate innovation, sustainability, and impact-driven ecosystems. Rajan, can we have you on stage, please? Mr. Rohit Mehra, he's a 2004 batch IRS officer and a pioneering environmental change maker, widely known as the Green Man of India. He has led low-cost, community-driven urban greening efforts, creating over 560 mini forests, school plantations, and vertical gardens using Vriksha Ayurveda techniques. He's also launched seed ball campaigns and India's first plant hospital, championing scalable, citizen-led, nature-based climate solutions. Welcome, Rohitji. Ms. Navya Singh, she is a founder of News with Navya, a digital climate newsroom built on the belief that climate change should make sense to everyone. Through stories rooted in Bharat's traditional knowledge, local solutions, and green businesses, she translates complex climate issues into everyday conversations. With a background in leading media houses, Navya now works with businesses and colleges to inspire and prepare India's future green force. Navya, please welcome the stage. And finally, our moderator for the day, Shalini. Ms. Shalini Singh is a Delhi-based journalist and co-founder of the People's Archive of Rural India, Pari. A very beautiful name, of course. An award-winning reporter, her work on environmental issues, rural livelihoods, gender, and culture has earned India's top journalism honors, including the Ram Nath Goenka Award, a former Nieman Fellow at Harvard University. She has reported extensively on climate change and covered COP27, bringing a strong grassroots lens to global climate conversations. Over to you, Shalini, to moderate the session, and we look forward to an energetic and very electrifying conversations. Thank you, panelists, once again.
Am I audible? Okay. Okay, well, thank you for having me and all of us here today at this very, very relevant conclave on sustainability. It's very heartening to see women at the heart of climate action. And a big shout out to Renu Shah and her team for putting all of this together. It's not easy. So at the People's Archive of Rural India, Pari, we began a nationwide series on climate change in 2019. And till date, we've done almost 40 focus stories from varied geographies and the most affected communities. Our team of over 15 reporters have dived in and trekked up, covering agriculturists, fisher folk, nomadic pastoralists, human-wildlife conflict, crop and ecological changes, and much, much more. My own work on climate change was from our very own Delhi, where I reported on the lived experiences of the remaining farmers and fishermen of the Yamuna. And since we're sitting here today in India's capital city, I'll share two statistics and leave you to infer the rest. So only 22 kilometers or 1.6% of the 1,376 kilometers of the Yamuna flows through the National Capital Territory. And that stretch alone, 1.6%, causes almost 80% of the entire pollution of the river. The second one, almost 7,000, I think, or 8,000, 7,000 or 8,000 crore rupees has been spent on cleaning the Yamuna since 1993. The river is still dirty. Where did that money go? So while I'll leave you to figure it out, I'm going to turn to my first panelist, India's green man, Mr. Rohit Mehra. You work within the government system, but also push it from outside through citizen action. What's the one uncomfortable truth about how environmental policies actually get implemented or don't at the local level? And what do bureaucrats and policymakers get wrong about grassroots climate action?
Thanks, ma'am. First, I would answer the biggest trouble is my mind, me as a citizen. I give you one example. Delhi has population of 3 crore people. If we decide we are sitting 200 people, maybe 100 people in this room, only 2 trees and nurture it, imagine 3 crore people, just multiply by 2. In 1 year, we are able to do whatever we wish to do. It would be green, clean, beautiful city. What we think that it should be done, but not by me, others, because it allows me to shift the responsibility. So the biggest challenge is my mind as a citizen. I don't want to do anything. There is a research which is worldwide. 140 gram per day you create waste, biological, non-biological. And imagine 140 gram multiplied by 3 crore. Now just imagine that 140 gram and I'm able to reduce only 10 gram per day. And imagine 1 day 3 crore multiplied by 10 gram. So I always look for others. It should be done, it should be done. But I think that if I am able to do it, we people can do it. And I've been doing it on personal level, though I have used many times, many of my batchmates, many of my friends, and we are able to create in Delhi close to 140 forests. And we have just started one initiative called School of Trees. You will be very surprised. I've been taught, groomed, educated, 99% of theory. I generally give an example. In 10th, I have Pythagoras theorem. Today, there are 22 years, 40 days in my service. I have never used it. Had I been taught how to plant trees or why to plant trees, it would have been much more better. It's my understanding. So this is how first I have to change my mind as a citizen, small steps with every person, and never think of others, whether they are doing, whether any other agency is doing. What is my duty I should do? Thank you.
So you stress firmly on pragmatic action at an individual level and then sort of scaling it, right? At PARI, every story that we do is a field report, which means that every writer, every photographer is physically present on ground, when they're covering the stories that we do. And so when we covered climate change from the ground up, it was a huge learning for all of us. The whole idea of climate change is, so complex with so many, official reports, it's so much jargon, so much, so many complex terminology and all of that, and to sort of sift through all of that and, really get to the heart of things. So what we did was we looked at climate change from those people's lives that are closest to the elements, and hence they're the most affected by, the changes that happen, and telling these stories in their language. So when I was invited to cover COP27 in Egypt in 2022, It was very valuable exposure to see how, local issues show up on an international stage. For instance, cities globally consume 78% of the world's energy and emit 70% of all greenhouse gases. And yet many Indian cities didn't have a climate action plan till date, don't. Delhi, that sees acute air pollution every year, drew up a plan as late as 2022. I'm yet to follow up on that, so I'm going to turn to Navya here. And Navya, your platform positions itself as bringing climate from policy rooms to dining tables. Give us an example, and what is an investigation or a story that you've done that exposed a gap between what institutions promised and what actually happened on the ground?
Right. So I think we live in a country where we celebrate headlines, right? And there are so many headlines that we as an organization, as a news organization, tackle on an everyday basis. When we say India has surpassed China when it comes to rice production, it immediately sounds historic, it sounds promising, it sounds like something you're supposed to take pride in. But, you're asking about an investigative report, and our team went on ground in Odisha. And what we found was very different from this headline. We found that farmers who were growing rice were not able to sell it. There were thousands of kgs of rice just lying there. They do not have anybody to sell it to. They don't have storage facilities. So a lot of rice from the previous year as well is just there. It's not being sold, right? So from a celebratory headline to what's really happening on ground, I think it's a huge gap. And that's what we're trying to fill. Across different industries, I think there are several headlines that immediately look like something really big, something that's really, historic for India, something like how India has doubled its fish production, for example. But we're not talking about how. We're not talking about how we're pulling out more fish than we need and more fish than we should from our water bodies. And very iconic fish species like mackerel or hilsa or a lot of other species are now going extinct because we are overfishing, right? So I think we really need to understand what goes beyond the headline, and which is why I say it's important to discuss climate at dining tables, because as a country we love to talk about politics at dining tables, right? And I think that's what News with Navya really wants to do. We want to simplify this conversation to an extent where you can really talk about it. You can really dive deep into numbers, talk about what it really means for you and how does it affect you.
Yeah, please feel free to pick up our stories as well. I'll turn to Rajan. Rajan, your book, Backstage Climate, tries to demystify climate science and politics. What's the biggest myth or excuse that companies or governments keep using to avoid real action? And how can storytellers, whether they're journalists, creators, or just everyday people, break that myth so that they can't hide behind it?
Sure. There are definitely a lot of myths and excuses that everyone hides behind. It's including us people, the companies, the governments, all included. But let's first talk about what are some fundamental issues that are impacting climate action, right? The first and foremost is it's a collective action problem. And the gentleman here spoke about it, but I'll just kind of elaborate on it a little bit. All our lifestyles have improved in the last 100, 200 years, ever since the Industrial Revolution. And we enjoy a comfortable life. And a lot of this has been brought around through use of fossil fuel energy. The electricity we use, the cars we drive, the houses we live in, the consumer products we enjoy. None of us are willing to give this up, give this lifestyle up, right? So which means that all of us are culprits in the deterioration of climate, because all our actions are leading to emission of greenhouse gases, and that is what is causing climate change, right? All that is happening is, I think my contribution is not significant enough. Others should change or give up their lifestyle, then I would. And this is happening at the consumer level, at the company's level, and also at the national level, right? So that's a problem that we need to solve. The second issue with the climate action is, it's a tragedy of commons. What it means is that if I'm a polluter and I'm emitting carbon dioxide, that carbon dioxide or any other greenhouse gas for that matter goes up in the air, mixes, and may cause a climate disaster somewhere else, let's say in Timbuktu. And it may not be immediate, it may be after a couple of years. Now, I, as the perpetrator, I'm not the sufferer, right? When I'm not the sufferer, I have no incentive to change. So everybody is continuing in the party, right? We continue to emit because we see no direct correlation. Again, it's happening at the individual level, at the company's level, at the national level, right? The third issue with climate action is there is a time lag, right? If I, as the gentleman said, plant a tree today, right? By the time it grows up and sequesters carbon dioxide, it'll be probably 10 years or 15 years. I don't have the patience to wait for that long. You know, we live in an age of instant gratification. If I'm feeling warm in the morning, I want an AC in the evening, right? Same thing goes for companies. Any investment in climate has to be long-term investment, but the shareholders are rewarding the management based on top line and bottom line growth, right? Which means all the corporate investments are being prioritized into revenue and profit generation, not into looking after environment, right? So there's lip service, but very little action. Same thing goes for governments. Governments are run by politicians. Politicians come for a fixed term of, let's say, 4 years or 5 years, right? During that time, they've already made promises to their electorate, and they want to fulfill those promises and also show they are doing a lot in terms of development. So they'll make a bridge, a building, you know, dole out some subsidies, but they will not invest in climate action because the results will show up much after they are long gone. So again, there is lip service, but not real action. So I think these are three fundamental issues with climate action, which we'll have to really put our heads together to see how they need to be solved. And the role that storytellers or journalists or anyone can play is through education. We need to educate the masses that what is climate change, how is it going to impact us, and therefore, what are your responsibilities for it? And this education needs to come through all modes, right? The second is, you know, journalists need to hold a mirror to authorities, right, and tell them what they're doing. And not only government authorities, even to the industry, you know, and hold their feet to fire and tell them this is where they are, you know, going wrong. So also the role of investigative journalism comes in so that we are able to dig into and at least name the polluters and bring them out in the open. So.
Thank you. So it seems like then we are looking at a hierarchy of consumption, and then we are looking at a hierarchy, and whether it's at an international level where you have the developing countries, you know, pushing for something, and then you have, you know, within the national, you know, the setup, then, you know, what sort of a development are we looking at and all of that. Very interesting. I'd love to, you know, dive deeper into this, but we'll take this a little ahead. So at PARI, I'd like to talk about two women-centric climate change stories very briefly. One was about the seaweed harvesters in Tamil Nadu who, you know, derive their livelihoods by diving deep into the sea, you know, harvesting this, the seaweed that they get, and how climate change has affected, you know, their livelihoods there. And then we move up to the east in Sundarbans, where, you know, cooks and helpers on the tourist boats in Sundarbans, not just their livelihoods, but even their health is being affected with the rising heat in Sundarbans. So these are some of the two examples in terms of women-centric climate change stories that we've covered at PARI. And since the conclave centers women in climate action, I'm going to ask all the panelists a related question to that. I'm going to begin with Navya. No bias there. Young women are increasingly engaging with climate content online. What kind of stories resonate with them, and how can this engagement be converted into, say, sustained civic or professional action? So give us some examples from your work.
Right. I think that's a very interesting and a very important question. Why I say that is because when I started News with Navya, we started off doing really basic environment, climate stories. And the kind of stories we do today are a product of the inputs and the ideas and the stories we've received from our audience, right? So we say that we've also grown up with them, and the way they understand climate, it's been a journey for all of us together. Having said that, I think the kind of stories that get a lot of traction from young women, both in urban India and rural parts of India, are the kind of stories that include the impact of a particular issue on, different parts of the society. Say, for example, if it's a story about food, how does it impact people? How does it impact livelihoods? How does it impact health, economy? So women sort of, again, no bias, but women sort of like to look at it from that perspective. And whenever we've traveled on ground for stories, we went to this place called Gunjung, which is in Assam, and we spent quite a few days there with local women to understand how they literally do everything, right? From working at restaurants to working in the farms to running the local economy to weaving and everything. So they play a very important role in the cultural aspect of that particular place. And that speaks volumes about what they really want to know when it comes to climate change. It's not just about them, it's about what's going to change around them, and for people living with them, and for the wildlife around them, for the forests around them. Because even when we talk about rituals, a lot of it is associated with how women have run this for so many years. In urban India as well, I feel a lot of comments and a lot of, feedback that we've received from young women in India, from urban parts of India, is also that these women really want to know what can they do about it, right? So I can't just talk about climate change from a polar bear or a melting glaciers perspective anymore. I have to tell them what's happening, and they really want to understand if there's something that they can do about it. And I think that really makes it more interactive and more impact driven.
So it's a complex engagement that you say, that when women engage with climate change stories online, they're not just looking at one aspect or the other. They're looking at it not from not just environmental perspective, but also how it affects their lives, and then what are the pragmatic actions they can take. Well, aren't we cool? Okay, Rohit, when you work with communities on urban greening, how are women driving these efforts, and what needs to change so that they get actual, like, real credit, resources, and power in these spaces?
As far as I understand, if you dissect my mind, my brain, I am 80% my mom, 10% my father, and 10% social influences. Now, we should replace a few of the things, parenting with green parenting. I give you one example. We did an experiment in our home. My average bill when I was in Ludhiana was 1,45,000 per month, per year power bill. Now, I told my kids, both are boys, if you save the amount of bill or power, the money, 50% money would be given to you. You know what is the habit they do? If I'm sitting even in the room and just for 1 minute I close my eye, they just switch off the things. And we are able to save literally 30 to 35% of. So one simple parenting tip by mothers can change. We do, brushing in the morning, many people keep the tap running. 10 liters of water, right? One person 10 liter, per day 40 liter. You now multiply by 3 crore into 40 liter, 1 month, and imagine there is no Bisleri, 1 liter is 20 rupees. So if I do not do, so these simple parenting tips, and we have educated many of the mothers, and many have come forward that we are doing this. Like in schools, many teachers have started front and back printing. So these are things which have to be imbibed, or rather cultured in the family ethics. Only then change can take place. See, as far as I understand, change has two aspects. Either you enforce or you educate. Enforcement is only 1%. You change here, everything manifests, as Sir has rightly said, it will take some time, but it will manifest in a better way. So women, rather, mother has a very, very big role to play in it.
And she would also be influenced by the society around her to sort of bring about these changes. So it's I get it. Rajan, in your exploration of climate action backstage, have you noticed women's leadership or experiences being sidelined in the clean tech and climate venture space that you're building? What narrative or structural shift is needed to ensure women aren't just participants but decision makers?
So I see your question in two parts. The first is that are women facing the brunt of climate change? Undoubtedly, right? Because they are at the forefront of managing food, water, and energy in most of the households, right? Especially in the rural areas. And these are three things which are getting impacted by climate change, or rather would get impacted and worsen with the onset of climate change, right? Therefore, it becomes important to take their perspective in mind for any decisions that are taken regarding climate action, right? The other side of it is that generally women have better sensibilities when it comes to nature, when it comes to conservation. It's a given. Also, we have a lot of accumulated traditional knowledge, right? As Rohit said, that's generally in the minds of our mother, and she's the one who passes them down. And that's how this whole thing of traditional knowledge has been going. So it's very important to preserve that. Now, if women have the knowledge, then they should definitely play a role in leadership. Unfortunately, neither are we listening to their experiences and heeding to that, nor are we kind of consulting them or taking their help in decision making. But it doesn't stop there. It's a larger societal issue. The biggest discrimination in the world is gender discrimination. 50% of world's population is a victim, right? So we cannot solve this problem by just looking at climate. We have to solve this problem on a very broad canvas, right? And which will happen through education, through empowerment, to policy changes. A lot has to happen, right? So I'm going to rest it there because this could be a very kind of a big debate, but I will answer your question, the second part of it, that in the climate ventures startup ecosystem, what are we seeing and what changes could happen? Now, simply or plainly speaking, when I look at the startup ecosystem or what is required to do a startup, there are three focus areas I look at. One is solutions. Anybody wanting to do must have a solution. And this solution can be a tech-oriented or a nature-oriented solution. The second thing you look at is business acumen or your business priority. And that could be for profit or for impact. And in the third channel, it is the ability to raise finance or the financial structuring, which could be either equity or it could be blended finance with philanthropic money and all others coming in. Now, if I were to create two extremes out of it, one side is tech solution for profit and equity oriented. Generally, the men dominate that section. The other section could be nature-based solutions, impact-oriented, and using blended finance from all over. I think women are greatly positioned for that. And that's where we should we should encourage them, in addition to the ones where men are dominant. I hope that answers.
These are all such very complex ideas that I think they all need like a panel by themselves. Before we open it up to the audience, I'm going to do a quick rapid fire with all of us. So I'm going to start with you, Rajan. Which is the one voice in climate discourse that we don't hear enough from?
Actually, we don't hear from anyone. We just hear lip service. So the only ones you hear are activists sometimes, and their voices are also snubbed.
Rohit?
It's very, answer would be very weird, but we never hear about trees. The capacity to absorb carbon dioxide has been reduced because of the dust and other things. So we have to see we are not the center of the world,
Yeah.
this universe. Homo sapien centric approach is the worst approach. There are billions and billions other species which are living. So if the biggest thing is, except human beings, we do not hear or pay attention to any of the species.
Right. Navya?
I think I agree with what Rajan said, and I think we definitely don't listen to women. We don't listen to tribal communities. A lot of our stories revolve around tribal wisdom and ancient wisdom, and we don't listen to wildlife. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I kind of agree with everybody. I think the marginalized are the ones that we hear from the least. Basically, the folks who emit the least and are the most affected are the least heard. Okay, my next question. One uncomfortable truth India needs to confront on climate accountability. Yeah.
Uh, we take pride in the fact that our per capita emissions are the lowest in the world, although we are the third largest emitter. I think we should get it out of our mind because India is very vulnerable to climate change because of its geography and also because of its economy. We are at the cusp of tropics where a lot of turbulence happens, right? We have the Himalayas and the glaciers are melting. Our water system will dry up. We have a very long shore and sea rise is happening. I was just talking to somebody a little while back that only if two of the world's largest glacial systems, which is the Antarctica and Greenland, they melt, the global sea level will rise by 215 feet. Wow. Imagine, most of our population lives in coastal areas. Most of our towns, cities are there. What will happen, right? So, and even from an economic point of view, 50% of our population depends for their daily bread on agriculture, right? What happens to them? Because agriculture would be the most affected. So I think we should do and need to do whatever is in our means to make sure this deterioration stops.
Rohit?
Ma'am, again, my answer would be very different. I think that we just need to, we avoid implementation of culture. I give you a very simple example. NASA these days, you would be seeing that they are saying 5 plants indoor because of Delhi or air pollution. We knew 5,000 years back that Tulsi should be just outside your house so that it purify everything. So we speak of our culture, but when it comes to implementation, as citizens, as Indians, we have to work on it.
Navya?
I think I go back to the first question that you asked me, that we need to move beyond just celebratory headlines and national statistics, and we need to differentiate between numbers that sound very promising versus what's really happening on ground. A lot of our stories that we've covered talk about how big promises sound really, fancy and, positive in so many ways, but if that translates to confusion, lack of training, lack of subsidies, say, for example, in terms of farmers, and by the time it really, that particular news leaves the national capital and goes to the rural parts of the country, it completely changes. So I think we need to look beyond just headlines and numbers, and that's one uncomfortable truth. Also, given how reducing attention span has sort of pushed us to just read the headline, and that's all that we do.
Right. I think the one uncomfortable truth India needs to confront is we're developing in a context of climate change. So what kind of development are we looking at, and at whose cost? My last rapid fire is one action that people in this room can take tomorrow or today, right, to strengthen climate accountability. Rajan, Rohit, and then Navya.
Stop over-consuming. I think if you do that, automatically change will start.
70 people in the room, switch off your light, number 1. Turn off the tap, number 2. Third, again, meet university research. Very simple example, if you can take it. I read a research that 77% of the things in your cupboard you will never use. So I am donating one thing for the last 10 years. I'm such a stupid consumer, my Almirah is still full. So if you can just, uh, I mean, gift or uh, reduce purchasing one thing, it will change many things.
Navya?
I think not all of us attended all the panels happening throughout the day, and the reason, one of the reasons there is that not everything about climate and sustainability is interesting to us, right? I mean, I run a news organization, and I also sort of have my own bias where I feel like, okay, this topic is maybe more interesting than something else. The idea there is that you don't have to fix the planet. That's one thing that people really need to know. You don't have to fix climate change. You don't have to do it for everybody. And you don't have to do everything at once. One size fits all approach usually does more bad than good. When I started off my organization, one big or really big climate action activity that I did was start by reusing my grandmother's old saris, and I would wear them till the time I could and then cut them into coat sets or suits, including the one that I'm wearing today. So that's mostly what I do. And that was the first sustainable habit that I incorporated in my life. And now I'm trying to learn from others and do more. So my only suggestion here is to pick one activity that does not really harm you in a way that you really have to step out of your daily schedule and do it, because then you won't be consistent with it. But pick one activity and be consistent with it. And I think the more you do it, the more convinced you will be to then hop onto other things and then explore this space.
Well, I think when I tell my mom I haven't had a shower in 2 days, she says, that's really, you're not being eco-conscious, that's just being awful. So that doesn't quite fly at my house. But I think one action people in this room could take is please read all the stories on Pari on climate change as a beginning for maybe a lot of things that, a lot of us have also learned and are excited to share with you. Do we have one last question for all the panelists? Do we have time for that? Or are we all burning with questions for everybody on the panel? Okay. Well, if in 1 or 2 lines, if all of you could quickly tell me what responsibility do institutions like colleges, media houses, and businesses have in shaping the next generation of climate storytellers and watchdogs? Rajan, Rohit, Navya.
Well, when it comes to colleges, I think if they could bring climate courses into their curriculum, that will certainly help. But more importantly, they need to educate the students that they need to hold their spine. They need to speak their mind out. And, that's the job of a journalist, to hold truth to power, to speak truth to power and be a mirror. I think that quality needs to be built. And for the corporations, it's our planet, it's our home. Please be transparent.
Yeah. Rohit?
Let's raise green children, green grooming, green parenting, because this planet is not mine. We have already taken away half of the things of my children. If I leave the planet giving a good car to my child with the bad air, I would be failing as a parent.
Navya?
I think talking about colleges or educational institutions, a lot has changed. And News with Navya works very closely with schools and colleges. And this entire understanding of green education, nature-related education, sustainability education has really picked up in India. The idea, again, is to stay consistent with it. Having said that, a lot of students are now worried as to the kind of jobs they want in the future, because whether or not we like it, every job will be a green job in the coming few years. So how do you really upskill yourself when it comes to a job like that? So that curiosity is at the right time. And it's important that colleges really make use of it, incorporate sustainability as part of every curriculum, not just journalism, not just law or media, but so many other things. I think it needs to be a part of every course. Media, I think, as I've been stressing on this one topic, this evening, that we really need to go beyond headlines, and we need to talk about climate change not just on days when there is a disaster, when there's something doom and gloom happening, right? Even on positive days, even on days where we can inspire action, when we can really share hope with people around the world, because I think that really inspires people to then act on it. And I think what the third is institutions.
I mean, you could answer for either one or...
Yeah, so I think
businesses?
Businesses. So we run this show called Makers of New Bharat, where we talk about green businesses and companies that are working in the climate and sustainability space. We don't promote what they are building, we promote why they are building. I think that story really needs to be out there, because we're living in a time where, as a consumer, I really want to know why this founder built a company in the climate space. What is his or her story? What really prompted them? And what are they really doing with it? I think that story really needs to come out. And businesses really need to realize that building right is great, but their story is also a part of change.
So I think I think consistency is the hero. Doing something for 6 months or 1 year and then just disappearing, it's not that cool. I think so. Just in terms of, if I could speak for the media, is keep telling and amplifying the stories that need to be seen and heard in ways that are accessible to as many as possible. Thank you. Let's open it up for questions.
You all are sitting over here like what the thought leaders who are shaping narratives across all of our population. So one thing I just wanted to understand, so one way, at least in Europe, what we have seen, there is a effort to put the blame, if I have to say, of climate change towards individuals than holding institution, being it public or private, responsible. So do you see that it is a problem or challenge, at least in Indian context, and what role that you all are going to play to shape the opinion around this?
So a short answer to that is, public problems cannot be solved by individual solutions, right? Addressing climate change is a big issue. It's a transformational issue. So you will need public policy to shape it. Now, having said that, individual action is very important because that's the baseline. But to change habits of individuals, to change usage habits or lifestyle habits, it's not an easy thing. You and I will always take decisions which are economically most suitable for us. So if we were to buy a glass of water, right, and one comes in plastic and the other one comes in something made with nature, and the one that comes with plastic is cheaper, then I'll go in with the one which is cheaper. So you need a policy intervention and change at that level to change user habits. So I think that's where, especially in a country like India with a large population, to bring in change, we will have to bring in regulations.
Yeah, I think the fact that we're all interconnected, I mean, it's become almost like a cliche in terms of, when we talk about climate change, that everybody, individual institutions, everybody is interconnected. And so while we may feel that just, one individual doing something may not help, but if, several of them do it, that, leads to some sort of a change, as Rohit has been also talking about. So I think it just takes a push from every aspect together to make that change.
Yeah, Mr. Rajan or Rohit, the way a person like Donald Trump says climate change is a bogey, I think that has got a huge impact on the whole world. So how to amend these type of people who are harming the cause of climate change?
It's unfortunate that that is happening, right? But I don't think we need to be overly worried. Donald Trump hopefully is a blip and we will get through it, right? Having said that, though US has kind of taken a position of withdrawing from the Paris Agreement, he's also saying that, they're in denial of climate, everything. But at the same time, many of the states in US, many of the private companies in the US, they are still standing up to climate change. They are continuing to invest. They are continuing to make change. They are, there are people who are kind of putting in additional philanthropic money into climate action. So I think all is not lost there, right? And hopefully, this definitely has caused a blip and has challenged the world, but we'll get through it.
Any more questions? I guess we're done.
Anjali, please.
When we were children, most of the people we used to see at least 2 out of 10 smoking on the road. But we took action, the government took action, and we don't see so much of people smoking out. Like now I am 56. But we are seeing the stack of plastic, and how long is government going to take a significant action so that the cancer and all other diseases caused by plastic and so much of solid wastage which we are observing now will get reduced? Any idea, any hope, any projection?
I think when it comes to plastic, I truly believe that individual action there really plays a role. Because we do have a lot of laws, we do have a lot of rules and regulations around plastic, but something as simple as, sipping tea in a plastic cup and just throwing it on the road does not really and should not really require anybody to come and tell you that you should not do it. So I think it really boils down to individual action and for people to realize what's good and what's not. Having said that, I think, yes, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in terms of implementation. Again, the same point that I've been stressing on. There's so much hullabaloo over, how bad plastic is and everything. But we don't really differentiate between good plastic, bad plastic. We don't know if single-use plastic is the culprit or is plastic in general a pathetic resource. So that education also, I think, is very skewed. It all boils down to awareness. It all boils down to individual action, because I think that's what really helps clean up cities.
I was just wondering that earlier in the 80s, 90s, we used to have advertisements for smoking, right? Where smoking was seen as cool. And, a lot of us did smoke a little bit back when we started, when we were younger. But we don't have those ads anymore. Nobody's pushing smoking. So I just wonder what's making the younger generation smoke these days when there is no societal, cultural sort of, push or, that sort of an aspirational thing coming up. That's just something I wonder about. Doesn't answer your question, sorry. Okay.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Ma'am, it's very simple as far as I understand. Let's be the change you want to see. Regarding smoking, I have one complete book on parenting. 92%, this is research not by Indians but world over, 92% of the habits are inculcated by children by just observing.
Right.
They do not do what you tell them to do or not to do.
Right.
So if in a family, father or mother is smoking, 92% chances of child picking up. Despite you put any kind of limitations, you engage the child, even then it is not possible. It applies to plastic also. If me as a responsible parent or parents, I start doing green living, many things change. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Great answer.
Thank you so much, panelists. And I was just wondering when we were having these discussions that it is said that India is a Krishi Pradhan Desh. So the moment we stop really looking at climate change from that lens, we are in for a huge, huge challenging times to come. But we heard stories of actual action on ground and stories of hope, and how those nuggets of advice about adopting daily consistent practices that will mitigate a lot of those effects and challenges, but also about integrating cultural wisdom with the science and the reason behind it. So let's move ahead with that positive note about doing at least one thing on a daily, consistent basis, not for 3 months, not for 6 months, but I guess 60 years to come and for the generations to come. So thank you again, panelists, for such a wonderful and eye-opening discussion. And on that note, to felicitate, I would like to call upon my team member, Ritu, to felicitate the guests. Thank you so much. And may I request you to please step down from the dais to allow for a more beautiful space for beautiful photographs and the good ceremony. Thank you so much. A big round of applause, ladies and gentlemen. And may I request Ritu to please felicitate Navya Singh. Thank you so much, Ritu. Mr. Rajan Mehta, please. Thank you so much, Ritu. Thank you, sir. Mr. Mehra, Rohit Mehra. And finally, our dynamic, enthusiastic moderator, Ms. Shalini Singh, please. May I again request all the esteemed panelists to come back to the stage. We would love to have a beautiful photograph with the founder, Renu, as well. She's really excited to get that click. Rohit. Thank you again, Ritu.